It's January 28th, 2017, and I'm in Rapid City, South Dakota, a little south of Rapid City, at my favorite brother's home. And off to his right is his beloved Kathy over there. You can see her. And we're getting ready to begin my interview with Kirk. Thank you, Kirk, for taking time and sharing your memories and insights about our family and family history. Let's begin with our grandparents. What recollection, if any, do you have of the Cordes, dad's parents?
Well, I have absolutely no recollection of either one of those. Just stories from what I've heard, maybe from my sisters, a little bit about them, but I cannot remember one thing about either of them over the years when they were either living near Ellsworth or in Rapid City. I just don't have any recollection whatsoever.
Yeah, okay. They were alive, I guess, when you were born, but you were just too small, right?
Yeah, and I guess I'm not sure on the dates there, when Grandpa Cordes died in the early 40s apparently, but I would have probably been 2 or 3 years old.
Right, yeah,
so,
yeah. Right.
I guess
Pull anything up from that one.
short memory on that part
Yeah.
of it.
Okay. Well, let's shift over to Mother's parents, who I think you knew much better, our Grandma and Grandpa Funk. Well, what do you remember about them? What do you remember about the Funk side of the family and Mother's relationship with her parents and so on?
Well, there was just a lot more interaction with the Funk side of my family than there ever was the Cordes side, and it just seemed like whenever we wanted to get together with family, it always involved the Funks, particularly up at Inning, South Dakota, and I guess as far as remembering each of them individually, I remember Sam quite well. He was, as I recall, in my memory of him, was that he was a real stern type of a person, and I was actually afraid of him because he was, it was like he would, if we were ever up there and did anything that he didn't like, we knew about it. And as far as my Grandma Funk, she was definitely a people person that was easy to get along with, and you just couldn't help but like her. And over the years, I guess I enjoyed spending time with her, and that's kind of how I remember the two of them.
What you mentioned that excuse me, Grandma Funk was a people person. Anything else about her in terms of work ethic or values or outlook on the world, or was she funny, humorous, whatever?
Well, she was probably all of those things, really. She was always thinking of ways to make a dollar. She was kind of the entrepreneur of the two of them, although I guess Sam made his attempt to make a living for the family, but as near as I can understand, it was more Grandma Funk that put the pieces together and actually held the family together as far as the economic side of it. She actually spent some time with us in Sturgis, a time or two, staying with us while I was in high school, and even out at Dalzell a time or two. And it was just easy to be around her, and she just seemed to have a kind of a laid-back attitude about life in general, and just a person that was easy to know and easy to talk to.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kirk. Anything else on grandparents?
I don't think so.
All right. Okay, Kirk, let's talk about you now, and that begins with birth up to the first grade. What would be your memories of that relatively short period of 5 or 6 years?
Well, I know that we lived down on the Pothook, but I just don't have any recollection of ever living down there. Although I think I was maybe like 3 or 4 when we moved on up to Dalzell, but I just can't remember a thing about living on the Pothook. But when we moved to Dalzell, I guess my memory of that was probably playing rancher outside of our house at Dalzell in the summertime, building corrals and putting my cattle in the corrals, and the life of a rancher, I guess, is what one of my fondest memories, at least, of living there and doing whatever I did up till the time I went to school. And I guess the idea of being a rancher was just instilled in me from the get-go, and I'd spend a fair amount of time with Dad riding Peanuts, and that was a horse that was not only my horse, but it was all of our kids' horse. But anyway, we spent a lot of time just riding and playing alongside of the house. I guess prior to going to school, I remember spending some time in Sturgis at our house on Pine Street, as well as on Davenport Street. I would spend some time in there during the winter months, before I was actually enrolled in school at Dalzell, and kind of remember some of my grade school buddies from that time that lived in Sturgis. And other than that, I guess I don't have a lot of standout memories of what I did and what I didn't do at Dalzell.
Okay. Did you get in any kind of trouble?
Well, can't remember it if I did. I was probably capable of getting in trouble, and maybe I did, but I don't have any recollection of ever getting in any too serious of trouble.
Were there any neighbors that you hung out with, or neighbor kids, or pretty much just on your own playing rancher?
Well, it was pretty much our own deal. I mean, we created our own entertainment, whatever it might be, sliding down the tin roof on our barn, or riding our horses, or walking the planks on the corral fence. Of course, the community was filled with Finners, and there were still a fair amount of them while I was growing up there. But it just didn't seem like we ever spent a lot of time getting together with neighbors, or actually never getting together with much of our family, other than probably the Funk side of the family. It seemed like I got memories of spending time at Inning that seemed to kind of stick in my back of my mind.
Do you have any thoughts, as to, you mentioned you don't remember getting together with the neighbors as a family? Do you have any thoughts as to whether or not that was just because everybody was too busy or whatever, or did we not, as our family, kind of fit in with the rest of the community? In other words, did other neighbors get together with other neighbors and we just didn't participate in that very much? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there was probably something to do with coming into the community and getting, not sure what the word is, being accepted by that community, because we were kind of the newcomers on the street, and I know for a fact it just there's a little, I don't know if it's resentment or what it is, but it takes a while to become accepted by the locals, and so that might have had a little bit to do with it. But other than that, I think we're just in an era where you probably didn't have a lot of things going on between families at that time, and that's maybe not the correct assessment either. But for whatever reason, it seemed like we more or less just kept to ourselves.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks for sharing that piece of history. Kirk now is going to talk a little bit about grade school. Where was grade school?
Well, I started grade school in the first grade at the Dalzell School. Bonnie Funk was my first grade teacher, and I continued through all 8th grades there at the Dalzell School, with the exception of in my 3rd grade during the 1949 blizzard. I was in Sturgis at the time that the blizzard struck, and there was no way I was ever going to get back out to Dalzell to go to school, and I was batching with my dad at that time, and so anyway, I had to enroll in the Sturgis grade school for my last part of my 3rd grade, and that was definitely a social and cultural shock, but I survived it. But other than that, I spent my 8 years at the Dalzell School.
Okay. Let's take a little diversion, because you mentioned the blizzard of '49, and then we'll come back and talk about school. That was huge by historical standards in South Dakota, and it's been exactly 50 years, I believe. No, sorry, whatever. No, more like 68.
Yeah.
Whatever. Well, at any rate, either through your own recollection or information you've gathered since then, tell me a little bit about the blizzard of '49.
Well, like I say, I was a 3rd grader, so I guess I don't have a real vivid memory of what all happened there, but I can remember being cooped up in our house in Sturgis on 1611 Davenport Street, and it was a 3-day blizzard, 3 days and 3 nights, and it never quit snowing the wind never quit blowing during that period of time. And I know my mom was really worried about how things were going to be at the ranch, because at that particular time my dad had just shipped a trainload, not a trainload, but a carload at least, of cattle to Sioux City, Iowa, and he was trapped in Sioux City, Iowa, so there's no one at the ranch. Our hired man, Walt Hoffman, was working for us, but as I recall, he was actually up near Creighton at his parents' when most of the blizzard was going on, and so she was very worried about how the cattle were faring during that period of time, and of course worried about how Dad was going to get back to the ranch at Dalzell, South Dakota.
Do you know how he did get back?
Oh yeah, I do. He was able to get on a train and get to Pierre, South Dakota, and then it was impossible for the train to go any further. So he was able to contact Clyde Ice, who was a airplane pilot at that time and well known throughout the state of South Dakota at that time, and in later years even became more well known. But anyway, he hired him to fly him home, and I remember my dad telling about kind of steering him in the right direction, and Dad would say, well, I recognize this place and that place, and he was able to take him directly to the ranch. And I guess, kind of a side note, our neighbor Albert Arneson was in the same situation, and he got back to Pierre along with Dad, and he had a fear of airplanes, and he absolutely refused to get on an airplane and fly home. So As near as I can remember from Dad's telling me stories about this, but he eventually got to Wasta on the train, which was much later, like maybe a week or 10 days later than Dad got home, and he was dumped off at Wasta, and he walked like 30 miles to his ranch out on the Bellafouche River.
Amazing. That's amazing. Wow. Do you know if Dad suffered any major livestock loss?
Yeah, he definitely had some loss. Not so much probably down on the river where most of the cattle were, but I know he had a little bunch of cattle up around the house there where we lived, up on the flats, and it was kind of like his hospital bunch, you would call it, or something. But I know actually some of those perished, and then I can remember 2 or 3 of them that had their legs or feet frozen off that were still around that following summer.
It was a historic blizzard, even by standards before and after, I guess, right?
Oh, it was. Yeah, I don't know that they ever had anything compared to it, really.
Yeah.
So the snow depth, the winds, and the duration of it was,
right,
without question, one of the worst records I've ever seen.
Probably a lot of loss of human life too.
You know, I guess I don't know about that so much. Doesn't seem like I ever heard too much about that, but there sure could have been.
Yeah. I wonder do you know how long Dad was, I mean, he got back by airplane, but how long before a road was open to where he could, get Wasta or Sturgis or whatever?
Well, I guess I don't really have the time frame on that. I'm guessing he was probably like by the time he got out to the ranch, it was probably 4 or 5 days after the blizzard had actually subsided, and from then on, I mean, that's where he stayed.
Yeah, sure.
But I do remember also that that Mom and you, my brother Sam, were in Sturgis also, and you were not in school, but she was so concerned about him and wanted to help out in any way she could, so she hired another airplane pilot by the name of Cecil Hayes to fly you and her out to the ranch, and you and her spent time out there with our hired man Walt Hoffman and my dad, and there was another hired man, I can't say his name right offhand now, but anyway, she went out there and did the housekeeping duties while they were trying to clean up the mess after the blizzard, and while we were in Sturgis, myself, along with, like, must have been Kay and Belva and Carolyn, of course, we're left there with no supervision, so in order to take care of that side of it, she was able to have her brother Bud Funk come in and stay with us, and he was kind of the supervisor.
I see.
While we were living in Sturgis, and Mother was out at the ranch helping Dad.
I'll just make a couple of comments. Having Bud as a supervisor causes me to chuckle a little from what I remember of him. And then secondly, yeah, I remember Mother and I flying out there, and I'll make a comment on that when it's my turn to be interviewed. But well, yeah, I'm glad we talked about the blizzard of '49 because it was incredible.
Mm-hmm. It's major.
Yeah. Well, back to school. Okay, Bonnie's your first grade teacher, and you spent all 8 years there at the one-room Dalzell school, except for the few months you were in Sturgis. Well, you mentioned that was a cultural experience to go from a one-room school to the huge city of Sturgis and that school. And want to elaborate on that a little?
Well, like I say, I was scared to death, and as I recall, it was like Mother did not take me into the school and introduce me to the teachers or whoever, and say that I was going to be enrolled here. It was just like, well, some of my sisters were already going to high school there, so as I recall, I just walked along with them. I went to school, went to my first day of school at the Sturgis Grade School, which is, I think they call it maybe the Erskine building, I think it was. We were actually not in the Erskine building. We were in the third grade in a house that's set next to the Erskine building, which has been destroyed now. But because there was 2 third grades and of students at that time. And anyway, it just seemed like I got thrown in the mix of that deal, and I did not have any idea where I was and how I got there or how to get back home or anything else, and I was just totally scared to death.
Did you eventually get more comfortable, or was it that way the entire... You would have been there for 3 or 4 or 5 months, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, well, it got a little better as time went on, and actually some of the older students at school, they kind of would take me under their wing because they could see I was kind of from the brush country and didn't know what was going on, but they actually would help me with if we'd get into a game of marbles or whatever it might be, they would jump right in there and it defended me in all the little games that we played during that time. So, and I'm of course got acquainted with most all the kids in our grade. I suppose there was 25 or 30 kids in that third grade, and actually 1 or 2 of them I invited out to the ranch that next summer, or maybe even the following summer, and became fairly good friends with them. But then after that, it was back to where I was the rural side of things, and they were the city kids. And but when I went back to high school there in I guess it'd been 1954 when I started high school there in Sturgis. So most all of those kids that I had gone to grade school in 3rd grade were still there, and it was like, that time of your life and that age of your life, it was like we all knew each other, so.
Interesting. Yeah, you're the only one I think of that went to Sturgis and then went back to the one-room school. You mentioned that Bonnie Funk was your 1st grade teacher. Any thoughts about other teachers, those that you particularly remember either favorably or unfavorably?
Well, out of the 8 years, and I guess maybe I had maybe 10 actually teachers, including the one in Sturgis. So, for the most part, they were all average or above average type teachers. I think probably I could say there were 2 or 3 of them that were just totally zeros, but for whatever reason or whatever, it seemed like, or at least I was, and maybe anyone else too, were able to overcome those years when you probably didn't have a whole lot going on as far as a teacher goes, and be able to pick up the slack a year or 2 down the road. So overall, it was a good experience.
Good.
The one-room school idea is, they argue the pros and cons on that, but I think in general a one-room school setting is probably has more ups than it does downs.
Right.
Teacher.
Did you have subjects that you liked better than others, favorite?
Oh, probably. I guess I was never really into the academic side of it, especially at that point. But on the other hand, I took my schooling serious, and I wanted to get good grades, but probably I kind of remember spelling as being one of my favorites, and social studies, and maybe a little on the math side too, although I never become very accomplished at that part of it. But
The home life of that you experienced during those 8 years, you were living, well, again, with the one exception after the 49 blizzard, you were living with our dad, at least during the school year. And then mother would be there in the summer and on some weekends. What was it like outside of school to live with dad and be at the ranch, and what would your daily routine be, or what would you do in the evenings?
oh, I don't have a lot of recollection about some of that stuff. It was there was no routine really, as I recall. I remember gathering eggs. We never really had any assigned chores from either my mother or dad, it didn't seem like, but it's not like we were lazy and didn't want to work. The working ethic was just instilled in us, or bred into us for whatever reason, and it seemed like that we all knew how to do things that needed to be done, whatever they may be. And for entertainment, like I said before, we more or less just entertained ourselves. So
The entertainment you spoke of earlier was in the summer because it was outside and so on. During the school year, especially in the winter, you came home from school, maybe did a few chores. Any evening entertainment of any sort with dad or with me, or do you remember?
Oh, yeah, I definitely remember that part. In the evenings, when I was out there with Dad and you both, the one thing that we had out there was the 32-volt electrical system, which provided us with lights as well as a radio. And we would get, the three of us would be glued to that radio every night on the long winter nights, listening to whatever it may be, Amos and Andy and Suspense and Hopalong Cassidy and whatever. And I have vivid memories of all that kind of stuff. And so the radio at that time was something like what you would be the TV era, and now we're in I don't know what kind of an era now with texting and messaging and all that, but radio was a big thing at that time.
Okay. Any board games or card games, or mainly just the radio in the evening?
Well, it seemed like maybe we played some cards, as I recall. Checkers. We did some checkers too. Yeah, Dad was a good checker player, and anyway.
Good memories?
Oh, good memories. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me see. What else might we talk about in terms of grade school at Elm Springs, or actually Dalzell, I guess? Because the school was called Dalzell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, did you then, or as you look back, were our parents, our family, were we rich, poor, middle class by the standards of the day?
Well, I guess I always felt that we were a cut or two above most of the people living in our area, and that doesn't mean that we were rich by any means, but like I say, we had a 32-volt light system, which no one else had in the area, and we had a car, that was, and most of the times it was in running order, and those two things alone set us aside from the rest of the community out there because the rest of them didn't have that, and so I always felt that, you know, I don't know if we can say that we're richer than the rest of them, and economically speaking, but I always felt, like I say, we're maybe a cut or two above them in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever get in trouble with Dad during those grade school years, or Mom? But he was the one that was in charge of you 9/12 of the time, right?
Yeah. You know, just hardly ever recall a time where either he or my mother disciplined myself for anything. And you know, I'm not saying that I didn't do some things wrong and probably had deserved to be disciplined, but for the most part, you know, it just seemed like they never were concerned about some of the things we did, and I don't think we did anything that really was at a level to where we deserved any sort of strict disciplinary type action.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've pretty well covered the grade school years, except one thing was triggered. We took a little diversion into the blizzard of '49, but then I remember, I guess it would have been 3 years later or something, the blizzard of, I think, '52. And you and I, for that part of that 1 year, we went to the Lynn School where our sister Valva was teaching. There was a pretty tough blizzard that came in when we were at the Lynn School, right?
Right.
You want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, that was pretty devastating. Actually, you mentioned something about people losing their lives in the '49 blizzard, and there were several people lost their lives in that blizzard in '52, and you know, that was a short blizzard, and as far as duration terms, but it was nasty. I can remember Belva and you and I driving out of the driveway at the ranch house there, and driving up to the Lynn School that morning, and it was like the sun was out, and it was a pleasant day, and I think that hit maybe in March or February or March, and you know, of course we did have the radio, but there was no concern about a blizzard striking. Like, you know, we didn't have the alerts that they have now that said, you know, we were 2 or 3 hours away from a major blizzard or anything like that, and so we didn't have any notification like that. And I remember Dad taking off with a team and wagon and heading down on the river to feed the cows by himself, and all of a sudden at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Lynn School, it was a total whiteout, and it raged for all the rest of the day, all night, and until early morning the next day, and that's when we all hunkered down in the schoolhouse and stayed overnight. And a couple of neighbors tried to come down and rescue us, and that was a failed attempt. We got in their old pickup and got about 100 yards out of the schoolyard area and got stuck, and so we all got ushered back into the schoolhouse, and they said, "You're going to have to hunker down here and spend the night," and they left us, and that's what we did. We stayed in the schoolhouse that night.
Boy, I bet that was a cool night.
Yeah, well, if that oil burner or whatever was in that school had gone out, would that have been the end of us?
Well, it did go out.
Did it?
I remember it going out, and we got it restarted. And then the other thing that was pretty scary, as I remember, as I look back over the years, but Bobby Lynn was the 8th grader, and I think I was in the 6th grade, right, at that time.
Probably, yeah.
Anyway, we were the 2 oldest ones, and after we realized we were going to have to stay overnight at the schoolhouse, and without a whole lot of
Supplies.
blankets or anything else, just hoping that the stove wouldn't go out, but we convinced my sister Balva that we ought to go over to the old vacant set of buildings across the road, and we thought we'd drag out an old mattress or some bedding or something, and anyway, she would not let us do that, but we kept whining and telling her that we could get over there and bring that stuff back, and finally, as it turned out, it was kind of a break in the blizzard, and as sometimes happens, and it looked like it's almost going to clear off, and we convinced her that now was time for us to go over there, and so the two of us went over there, and we found nothing to bring back, but by the time we were ready to come back, it was absolutely a raging blizzard, and we couldn't see anything, and I still to this day don't know for sure how we made it back, but I remember grabbing onto a fence line a time or two, and we got back to the schoolhouse, but I mean, Balva was absolutely white as a sheet and just worried sick. She thought she'd never see us again, but we did get back, and looking back over that deal, it was not a wise decision.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Amen.
Well, thank God that it worked out. And then Dad himself had a scary experience, as I recall too, but I don't recall it that well. Can you share that?
Well, you maybe know it as well as I do, but when he got the river and fed the cows, and everything was weather-wise, everything was pretty good. But when he started coming back with the team and wagon and the empty wagon, I mean, he wasn't loaded or anything, but that blizzard hit when he got up on the flats or south of the Dalzell store, old Dalzell store, and that was just a barren piece of land, and it got to the point where he absolutely got disoriented and didn't know where he was or what direction he was going or anything else, and he wandered around out there until he finally hit a fence, and he recognized the fence and as kind of the whatever border fence it was or what direction it was going, and was able to follow that fence until he got to the corner where the gate was, and then he got I think he got through the gate and onto the old county road there, and somewhere or other right in there the wagon got kind of bogged down, and so he had to unhook the team, and he said he more or less just let that team lead him on back to the house, which wasn't a long ways, but it was probably something like a quarter of a mile or a little less.
Yeah. I mean, he was very lucky.
Oh yeah.
Or, I mean, and he was not someone that was unused to these situations. So for him to get that close to tragedy tells you something about the nature of that blizzard.
Well, and of course, he wasn't a spring chicken at that age, or
right.
that time.
That's right. Yeah, but when that
he had been like probably 65 years old when this was going on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
and but I remember him telling us that the first thing he did when he got the team taken care of and into the house, he picked up the phone because he was worried about you and I and Balva,
Right.
that we had maybe tried to come back home. And so he got on the old telephone, which was normally about 50% of the time it did not work.
Yeah.
But he was able to call up to the Lynn family, who were the ones that had tried to rescue us, and they assured him that we were all okay. So he was able to rest in peace all over that part of it. Anyway.
Oh, that was probably
Good.
a huge relief.
Yeah.
For him.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we got a chance to talk not just about your grade school experience, but the two blizzards that you shared. So thank you, Kathy. Is there anything that you want to add? Or did you enjoy listening to that?
I did.
Oh, good.
Good.
I'm glad you participated. Thank you, Kirk. I thought we were done, and I terminated it too early. Anything else about grade school you want to share?
Well, you know, like I say, I never thought that I was totally out of control as a child growing up, and never got disciplined for a whole lot of things. But and the one thing, one of the things that I can remember about going to school out there was my friend Russell Burmaster and I were in school at the same time, and he was an 8th grader and I was a 4th grader. But anyway, he was always coming up with some idea of doing something, and it happened that on Halloween night that he made a big plan that we were going to get on our bicycles. Actually, I don't think I even had a bicycle. He had a spare one, and we were going to go out and do trick or treating, and it was mostly tricks. I mean, we weren't into treating much. And anyway, it was a really pleasant evening on Thanksgiving evening,
Halloween.
or Halloween,
Yeah.
and we decided to jump on our bikes and take off, and we hit the one house of an old bachelor's and soaped his windows a little bit, and we could see him sitting on the inside there with a kerosene lamp reading the paper, but we soaped his windows anyway. And then we got to the next house, and we were getting ready to, well, we'd already soaped the windows some, but we're about done doing our tricking at that point, and we heard a vehicle start coming down the road, and so we didn't want to get caught in the act. So anyway, we tried to hide behind their little trailer house that they were living in, and as it turned out, they spotted us. I still don't know how, but when he pulled into the driveway, he knew that we were behind the trailer house, and he made several attempts to spook us out. He would drive up on one end and then throw it in reverse and drive up the other end, and he did that several times. And finally, the last time he did that, he bailed out of his pickup, and so of course we started running as fast as we could in the middle of the night, or it wasn't middle of the night, but it was pitch black. And anyway, he was overtaking me easily until Russell, my partner, his hat flew off, and Russell stopped to gather up his hat, and this guy caught Russell, and he took him back to the trailer house, and he told him he was going to have to wash all the windows off. And then the father-in-law of this guy came out, and he was trying to talk his son-in-law out of doing all this stuff, and he said, let him go and forget about it. Well, as this was going on, Russell told me later, he said, I could feel the fellow loosening up his grip on my wrist. So he said, I jerked away from him and run across the road. And he said, when I hit the ditch, Russell said he fell down, and then this guy who was chasing him was right behind him, and he was running 9-0, and when Russell fell down, the guy fell down almost on top of him, but he just did a belly skid all the way across the gravel road, and Russell was back on his feet by that time, and 100 yards down the road, turning around and cussing and yelling at this guy. And I was back in the corrals of this farmstead, hearing and observing all of this. And anyway, as it all shook out, Russell and I got together back in the barnyard of this homestead or farmstead, and we got back on our bikes, and we eventually made it home. But that was, of all the different things that I did during the high school, my grade school years, that was probably the most memorable and the most scary, because I thought we were both dead meat.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great story. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Okay, we're back at it again, Kirk, and we just finished talking about grade school, and now it's time to go 72 miles straight west to Sturgis and go to high school for 4 years. So what was it like for a country kid to go to the big city?
Well, the fact that I'd already been initiated to town life by having spent time there at our house in Davenport Street with some of my sisters, particularly on weekends, we'd spend time there. And then the fact that I went spent a semester in 1949 there going to grade school, that really kind of lessened the cultural impact that was I may have had I not had those experiences, because I did know my way around a little bit and know a little bit about town life, but nevertheless it was still a fair amount of differences between going to school at Dalzell and going to school in Sturgis. So.
But you did have at least a little bit of a maybe a less transition than maybe others that had been out in the.
Well, yeah, I think for the most part,
Yeah.
The other thing, when my freshman year, I can remember spending a lot of my time with some of my third grade classmates that I knew, like Billy Went and David Donaldson were good friends of mine there in that area that we lived in town. And so I kind of wound up thrown in with them when I first got to Sturgis as my freshman year. And we'd walk to school every day practically. And then it seemed like after the freshman year, I just did a complete transition from hanging out with the so-called city kids or town kids, and started through in with the country folks. And for the next 3 years of my high school years, it was like, there was town kids and country kids, and I was in the group with the country kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. What was the town of Sturgis like at that time?
Oh, it was certainly different than it is now. The main street was just lined with all sorts of little different business type places, and Ben Franklin's and Loman's and those type of places where they'd kind of hang out after school for ice cream type shops and that sort of thing. The whole layout of the town at that time was just a typical small town business, or a main street with businesses lined on each side of the street for a good 2 blocks, and changed a lot since then.
Yeah, right. Did you have any jobs during high school outside of the house?
The main thing, well, I guess I did 2 different things. Actually, I helped the janitor at the grade school building there in Sturgis. I think they call it the Erskine building now. And then I also spent my senior year, I spent working out at the Sturgis Livestock Auction Exchange every Wednesday when they had their sale day. A friend of mine, Gene Reichert, and I worked there all through our senior years. That was the 2 main things that we did, other than household chores or something like that.
Yeah,
probably.
right. That the Sturgis Livestock Exchange or auction, that was a big deal, wasn't it?
It was a big deal. That was one of the biggest auction barns in the area at that time, and Wednesday was a huge day in Sturgis for the businesses and all sorts of different things. And they would have thousands of cattle at a Wednesday sale, and I guess I can remember actually helping to load out railroad cars. At that time the train was a lot more active than it is now, and we would load out cattle on railroad cars until 3 in the morning. And so
Wow.
It was a pretty long day by the time we spent all day out there, and then had to get up the next morning and go to school.
Yeah, it would be. And you took the day off from school, huh?
Yeah.
Was that easy to do?
Well, you know, we had to go to Mr. Brown, our principal, and he was a disciplinarian and a pretty strict old boy, but he didn't really give us too much trouble. My mother, I'm sure, had a hand in explaining all that to him, and I guess maybe he reluctantly gave in and let us do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have favorite teachers in high school?
Oh yeah, there was, I guess, a standout or two maybe. Actually, I took ag 4 years. I liked our ag instructor, Wayne Gray. He wasn't maybe considered a great teacher, but he was just a nice guy, and I liked him. And then Helen Woods, she was our English teacher. She was really nice. She always seemed like she cared a little bit about me and would seemed to like me. And you know, there's two or three others. I guess the one that I disliked the most was Lillian Anderson, and to the point where I wouldn't even take English into my senior year because I'd heard so many stories about her and how tough her class was and everything, and I was able to avoid English with her in my senior year by taking a journalism class with Mrs. Wood. So,
Oh, yeah. So you escaped Lillian Anderson.
I did.
Yeah. Who were some of your closest friends? You mentioned Gene Reichert already.
Yeah, Gene Reichert and Wayne Bichon. Oh, and Lester Tippy from New Underwood. He and Wayne were good friends. And well, and then of course Bub Bradley, who was going to St. Martin's Academy, was a good friend of mine, and Dean Strong. But Dean's school career was kind of hit and miss, and he finally wound up getting, I believe, kicked out of the Sturgis High School, and wound up going to Spearfish for a while, and I think after that he finally finished his high school career in the Army, I believe. But those I mentioned were probably some of my best friends. I guess there was Jerry Chafee and Roger Lofka also, but
When you were hanging out with those guys, what are the kinds of activities that you can report upon? Yeah, no, even the ones you can't report upon at this stage. What did you do for entertainment, or killing time, or having fun, or whatever?
oh, I don't know that we did anything that was just real wild and crazy type stuff. Well, maybe it probably got on the verge of that a time or two, but you know, I never got into sports whatsoever. I kind of always regretted that, but it just didn't seem like coming in from a country school and getting into sports was a good fit for someone like me, and so I didn't have that part of it to take up some of my time in after school hours. So I guess maybe as much as anything, and there weren't many of us that had cars at that time. I certainly didn't, but well, I guess in my senior year I finally got a car. But you know, for the people that did have a car, we'd drive around and drag Main, we called it. Go up and down Main Street in Sturgis and make a U-turn at each end of the 2 or 3 blocks that we were dragging, and you know, that was kind of the things we did. Like I say, we never got into any real serious trouble that I can recall.
No jail time or anything?
No jail time at that time, anyway.
We can talk about that later.
Maybe.
Well, now Kathy's not here this morning, so you can openly talk about the dating scene. What was that like?
Well, there wasn't much going on in high school on the dating scene for me. never got into the girl scene at all in high school to speak of. My friend Gene Reichert, he was the totally opposite, and he was always trying to line up deals, and I would reluctantly go along on some of his things that he was interested in as far as the girl scene went. But I can truthfully say I never had a true girlfriend all the way through my high school years.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of entertainers, whether that's music or movie stars or particular movies or whatever, what comes to mind?
Well, and as far as the music scene goes, it was country music for me from the get-go, and I do remember, like in my senior year, or maybe even my junior year, you know, that's when Johnny Cash and that era of musicians was real popular, and we would occasionally go down to Rapid City to the old city auditorium and listen to some of their concerts. That was a big deal as far as I was concerned. They would draw a huge crowd, it seemed to me at that time. I don't suppose there were all that many people, but and then in regard to the movies, I always kind of enjoyed going to movies. At that time, I think most of the time through my 4 years there, the cost of a student ticket was like 14 cents to go to a movie, and you know, I guess maybe tended to like probably some of the Western movies with Randolph Scott. I know was a favorite at that time, and some John Wayne movies. I guess he was just kind of getting into the scene, and so that was going to a movie was probably some of the entertaining things that we did to keep us out of trouble.
Yeah. Did you have an allowance? You mentioned you had jobs, earn a little extra money. Did you have an allowance from the parents?
Well, not on a real a schedule, certainly, but it just seemed like if we were going to go out and do something that required a little extra cash, we would just ask Mother if we could have $1 or $2, as I recall. I know for a fact that we were never given a certain amount of money at the beginning of the week and that sort of thing. But and it's not like that we were begging her for money all the time either. And whenever we did ask for $1 or $2 or 50 cents or whatever it may be, it seemed like she was pretty agreeable, and we'd go on our way.
Did you have a curfew, like you had to be in at a certain time?
Yeah, but there again, you know, I think our curfew was pretty much 10 o'clock, and it was almost like it was a kind of not a strict rule. It was just kind of you just knew that we had to be in by 10. I mean, it was like Mother said one day, or at the beginning of the season or school year, that you had to be in at 10 o'clock, and it was never like she hounded us or kept on had to tell us daily. We just seemed like kind of knew what our limits were, and we pretty much obeyed the curfew and got in at 10 o'clock.
So it sounded like you just had a lot of good judgment and self-discipline. And now one of our, maybe a couple of our siblings have suggested that that the parents were much more strict on them than you. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I wasn't around for the most part when they were going to school in there. I was out at Dalzell with my dad, but You know, I guess I can't say for sure. I guess in general, families, in particular bigger families like ours, you know, parents start out stricter with the older kids and kind of slack off as they go down the line. So, and then the difference between boys and girls, there's probably some differences in how parents set up their rules and regulations for the boys as compared to the girls, possibly. But I guess I didn't think that we got away with a whole lot of just unreasonable type hours and escapades and that sort of thing as compared to my sisters.
Well, again, it may be that a curfew was not needed with you because you exercised such incredibly good judgment and self-restraint, right?
Well, I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but I guess a little bit of it is judgment and self-discipline. You kind of know the difference between right and wrong, and I guess you can kind of set up your own barriers of where you want to go with that. But it was not like that I was out every night pushing it to the limit and not taking care of my school studies and that sort of thing.
Now, all of this happened at 1611 Davenport Street, right?
Yeah.
What was the home scene like? Mother was there in charge, but it was, and of course you were there, but she also had people who came and spent the school year, I think, and of course Kay would have been there, I guess, when you started. Anyway, just that, tell me a little bit about the scene, if you will, at 1611 Davenport Street that during those 4 years.
I guess after my freshman year, it was just Kay and I in my freshman year that was living there, and then beginning my sophomore year is when I think Mother started boarding the three Ferguson. No, yeah, Patsy and Annabelle and Frankie.
Okay.
Ferguson started staying with us for the next 3 years, and at the same time, Gene Reichert boarded with us also. So, Kay was still going to school, I think, in my sophomore year. But anyway, it was a house full at that time, and you know, Mom would do the breakfast and evening meal, and sometimes we would come home to grab a bite to eat at noon. Most of the time, we would go to the cafeteria, which was a relatively new idea for schools at that time, and she would buy a ticket for all of us to eat at the cafeteria. But for 3 years, it was a pretty busy household there.
Yeah, I thought so. Take any family vacations during that period, or even earlier in your life? I'm not sure I asked that earlier, but
we were not much into the vacation scene. During those school years, I can remember going to Denver a time or two and visiting our cousins down there, Rod and Perry Holst, and Grandma Funk was kind of living out at Inning at the time and spending quite a little time down at East Lake with the Holst family, and so we would oftentimes, or I don't know if often is the right term, but I can remember several different times when we would drive to Denver with her, and I guess that was as much as a vacation as probably we had. At the same, probably in those same years, I can remember taking several trips to Sioux City, Iowa with my dad, and we shipped cattle. But there was certainly not a planned vacation, or we would go to some destination and spend time and that sort of thing like goes on anymore.
Right. Okay. Tell me about a couple of the more humorous or hilarious things that might have happened during high school. Yeah. Anything come to mind?
I guess they're probably the one that stands out in my mind more than anything else, and there's probably a lot of them, but I fail to remember all that. But probably the funniest one was when I think I was in our sophomore year, and we took a biology class, and like I mentioned before, we called him Colonel Brown, our principal. He was an instructor, and he was a real stern, strict disciplinarian, and a fairly good instructor actually, but people kind of feared him in a way, and respected him also. But anyway, we had to take a test one day, and a friend of mine, he wasn't a real close friend, but he sat right across the aisle from me, and his name was Jerry Humble, and he didn't bring his pen or pencil that day, so he raised his hand and asked Mr. Brown if he could borrow a pen from him. And so Jerry used his pen and wrote out the test, and at the end of the period, when the bell rang, everyone jumped up and run off, and Jerry took Mr. Brown's pen with him. And so the next day, when Mr. Brown came in the room, and he would wait until the bell was just starting to ring before he would pop in the room, and he would strut up the aisle to the front of the class, and I mean, everyone had to be in their seats, and no talking. You could not chew gum, and we had all sorts of little rules that we had to go by. But he was in total control. But anyway, when he walked in the room that day, he walked over to Jerry's desk, and all he did was hold out his hand right kind of underneath Jerry's chin, and Jerry was totally puzzled. He could not think what was going on and why he was doing this, and then Jerry realized that he was chewing gum, so he just spit his gum out in the palm of Mr. Brown's hand, and of course Mr. Brown was wanting his pen, not Jerry's gum, and the look on Mr. Brown's face was just out of this world. I mean, he just couldn't believe that was happening to him, that someone spit gum in his hand. But anyway, it was pretty humorous.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was a freshman when you were a senior, and I remember towards the end of that year, end of your freshman year, there was a rumor going around right towards graduation that there was somebody in between classes that would run and yell and scream and holler, just pretty much shuttered the entire building. And Colonel Brown, I think, was on that, trying to catch that culprit, and never did. Do you have any knowledge of who that would have been?
No, I think he got run out of school probably.
I see.
But,
okay. All right. Well, I thought you might know who that was, so I just
don't recall that guy.
All right. Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask. Well, anything else about high school you want to share?
Well, not really.
Okay.
I guess I enjoyed those years. It was like I was definitely ready to get out of school and didn't want anything to do as far as furthering my education at that point in time. And I wanted to get back out to the ranch, and that's what I did. So But they were good years for the most part.
Good. Sounds like it. Thank you. Let's continue, Kirk, with your life after high school, but before the time you met and married Kathy. So that's a period of 8 or 9 years in there. And what all happened during that time, chronologically or however you want to share? Let's give us a little overview on that.
I graduated in 1958 from high school, and like I say, I was not interested in going and furthering my education at that point in time, and I was wanting to ranch and that's all I had on my mind, and so I went back to, I guess at that time it was actually Elm Springs instead of Dalzell, because the Dalzell post office I think had been shut down. But in any case, I spent the next 9 years out there ranching with my dad and my brother-in-law Marvin Anders, and like I say, it's what I wanted to do. I loved doing it, and it was good years. I was able to kind of be my own boss and do the things, do whatever kind of I wanted to do. I didn't have to worry about curfews and that sort of thing, and or at least I didn't pay any attention to them if Mother had any. But we would work hard during the week and have some good times on weekends, and that's pretty much the way it went for the next 8 or 9 years.
And you're starting to build up your own equity in cow herd and stuff like that, and partnership with Dad and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I started in high school. I started banking at what they called the First National Bank of the Black Hills. Actually, Jean, my sister, worked there for a number of years too. But anyway, at first it was just a checking account, of course. But then when I got more involved in ranching and started borrowing money and that sort of thing, I worked with the people in that bank, and actually I have always had my checking account with that bank. The bank has changed names several times since then, but I've always had a checking account with the bank that I started with, and I was able to start building up my cow herd. Eventually, Marvin and I leased a place from Mom and Dad, and we expanded a little beyond that over the years, and we're able to lease some other land to go along with what Mom and Dad had. And anyway, ranching is a kind of a struggle, but I was enjoying every minute of it, and you eventually struggle and work hard at it long enough, and you finally get paid off at the end for it, and I guess that's kind of where it went.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, ranching is a challenge, at least at two levels. You have your pretty significant price fluctuations, and then the weather's always a big factor out here too. Do you remember during those 8 or 9 years were there some years that, maybe in terms of weather or prices or whatever, that were really, really difficult, devastating, and maybe others not so much?
The weather probably was the most striking thing, probably. Prices, fluctuated definitely, and there's better years, and some were better years than others. But a weather issue would devastate, I think, most ranchers more than anything. And the one drought in 1961 was really bad, and then we had a blizzard in 1966, a spring blizzard. That was when Marvin and I were totally on our own, and Dad was completely out of it. But that was pretty devastating. We lost quite a few cattle in that blizzard, and Those two weather incidents and general weather will impact your ranching enterprise as much as anything, in my opinion.
Yeah. At one point in there, as I recall, you and Marvin dabbled in the sheep business just a little too, didn't you?
We did. Marvin and I were both getting a little disappointed in our economic progress at ranching. It seemed like, we just thought we should be getting further down the road than we were, and we were just struggling, we thought. So anyway, my Uncle Bud Funk, he sat down with us and told us the merits of owning sheep and how good sheep were, and that had helped him a lot in his career as a sheepman and a cattleman. But so anyway, we bought 150 head of ewes from him, and we had those for about 2 years. And we kept them up at Elm Springs there all the time on that land up there, and I would lamb them out. I remember lambing them out for 2 years. And then in 1961, when that really bad drought hit, we just got totally wiped out as far as grass and pasture up there, and so we had to sell them. But that was, I kind of liked the sheep deal, but we never tried it again.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned that, I don't know, by 1966 or whenever that blizzard was, that Dad was no longer actively involved. Well, I can't remember the exact year, maybe, but you can, if you do, when he had his first stroke, and I believe you were with him out at the ranch. Can you share that? Anything about that?
Yeah, that was the spring of '59. I had gotten out of high school in spring of '58, and it was just about a year to the date when he was out at the ranch. At that time, he was spending quite a little time in Sturgis with Mom and you, and then he would come out the ranch and hang out with me out there, and just he and I, Carolyn and Marvin, were living down on the river at that time. And anyway, that's when we had our sheep, because what kind of propelled that stroke, or at least this is my opinion, we had some feed bunks that needed to be moved inside. He insisted that we move those wooden feed bunks inside so they wouldn't set out all summer in weather. And anyway, he and I packed them into the shed out there, and there was only like 3 or 4 of them, and it didn't require a lot of strenuous type work, but for whatever reason, I think that kind of stressed him enough, and the minute we got the last one in, he headed for the house, and I stayed out there and was doing something. I can't remember exactly what, but I looked over my shoulder and I saw him hanging on the yard fence gate, kind of. It was on a hinge, and he was kind of hanging on there, swinging back and forth, and finally he went clear down to the ground and just laying flat on the ground when I got over to him. And he was conscious and everything, and could still talk good. It never affected his voice, but he was just dead weight, and I had my car sitting right beside him, and I don't know for sure how I ever got him loaded up in the car. And no one else, different ones asked me how I did. And I guess I just did it. And we drove to Sturgis and picked up Mom and drove on down to Rapid, and he was admitted to the hospital, and he never did fully recover from that. But he had some good years, some pretty good years after that. Yeah. But later years, the quality of life had pretty much lost him.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a pretty scary and unexpected incident for a 19-year-old.
It was a little bit. I can remember calling Carolyn down. She was down at the river, living down there, and she assured me that there was a lot of new stuff and new things they were doing for stroke victims, and so anyway, I kind of told her what was going on, and he and I took off, and then they were in practically at Rapid City when we got there. I think they had both taken off and driven in also.
You and Carolyn together on the phone had pretty well accurately diagnosed it as a stroke. It sounds like, huh?
Well,
because she was telling you things about strokes.
I don't know if I just decided that's what it was, or if her and I did, but yeah, I guess I never really thought about that. It's like, there wasn't, at that time, there wasn't all the information there is out now about health issues, but for some reason or other, it just seemed like we knew what was going on, and that's what it was.
Yeah, interesting.
And I remember when talking with Mom, and before I left too, and the first thing she did was ask me if he'd lost his voice, because I guess maybe part of it was we kind of lived through Sam Funk's issue with stroke, so all of us were a little bit familiar with strokes, maybe, but for whatever reason, that's kind of how it shook out.
Yeah, interesting. Backing up a little bit, you mentioned, when you graduated, you headed straight to the ranch. That's what you wanted to do. It wasn't because you. Well, I guess that's my question. Was there pressure from our parents for you to get involved in ranching, or you just knew that's what you wanted to do?
I knew that's what I wanted to do. They certainly didn't make any attempt to discourage me, but on the other hand, they were not telling me every day that that's what I had to do, and that they wanted me to take over the ranch or anything. It was just like that we're kind of mutually agreed that over the years that's the way it's going to be, and that's how kind of how I got involved in it.
Yeah. During that 8 or 9, well, I guess 9 years before you and Kathy got married, but the two of you dated for a while. So before she came in your life, you had 7, 8 years or whatever, being a young single cowboy out there. Have any good stories to tell about that?
Well, I got stories, but I'm not going to tell them. I guess in general it was a good years. It was I kind of compare it to hearing my dad tell about his years freighting out in Wyoming. It was some of the best years of his life, he says, and I guess in general that was some of the best years of my life, was when I had all the freedoms I did have, and didn't have a lot of responsibilities, and had a good time ranching, as well as a lot of fun things happen on weekends and that sort of thing.
I sense you'd prefer to leave it just at kind of the general level rather than go into any specifics about those good times. Am I reading you right?
I think that's probably as good as it can get.
Okay. Anything else about that period of your life?
No, I can't think of anything
Okay.
offhand. So.
Let's shift over to the time when you met Kathy, and then were married in August, as I recall, 1967, almost 50 years. When did you first meet Kathy? What were your first impressions? And maybe more importantly, what do you think she thought of you? I wish she were here right now.
Well, I I don't recall it being any official introduction. I actually met her through you because you were had been going to college in Laramie, and that's where she attended. But in somewhere in that period of time, I was down there visiting you at different times, I remember, and then sometimes you would come home on weekends, and we'd go to the New Underwood dances or rodeo dance at Spearfish or something, and in all of that time frame, she was part of that crowd or group, I guess. We still okay? Yeah. And so, like I say, it was never like we got singled out and got introduced to each other. It was just that we, a bunch of kids together, and we got to know each other. So that was my introduction to her.
In other words, you knew her for a number of years before you ever became kind of an official item and started dating and getting serious.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, she started to Laramie, I think, in the fall of '62, and we never started dating until the fall of '66. So, but I kind of knew her all those years.
Yeah, right.
And, we bumped into each other over the years at, like I say, dances and rodeos and that sort of thing. And she had just graduated from college in the summer of '66. And no, it must have been, I think it was in the spring of '66 she actually graduated, because summer of '66 she took a job as a Head Start teacher in Rapid City, and I was in the Head Start program. Had just kind of been initiated, and then she was able, kind of as a result of getting into the school system there in Rapid City, she was applied for a kindergarten position for the fall of '66, and she signed a contract, and then that's kind of when we started to date, and we dated for about 9 months, I guess it was, and got married in August of '67, and have been married close to 50 years at this point in time.
Wonderful. Congratulations. Yeah, absolutely. Question says, any romantic tidbits that can be shared in polite company?
No, I guess I'm not going to get into any of that part of it.
Okay.
She, I guess, you know, for the most part, she had a huge impact on my life from then on out. She's without question the reason I decided to go back to college, and the reason I decided to go back is 'cause she encouraged me to, and I just can't say enough about her for that part, because again, that was maybe some of the best years of my life when we were able to do that, and you know, she was teaching at the same time, and we had some good years together before we started having kids, but she was kind of my rock at that time to get me started back to school. And it wasn't like I mentioned earlier on that I didn't have any desire to get for further education shortly after I was out of high school, but over those years I even attempted to enroll in Spearfish. I remember one time, and you know, it was like I just needed someone or some little impetus to push me over the edge to get me started again. I just didn't have it in me to strike out on my own and head out to college somewhere without having some security. And I guess she was the security that and the impetus that pushed me over the edge to get me to go back to school, and I just really glad that I did that.
Well, it's a great love story and a real tribute and testament to Kathy and the important role that and influence she played in your life and supported you through all of that. So, well, let's end there, and we'll pick up on the next segment here, where we just finished. Kirk, you were talking about the tremendous positive influence Kathy had on you in so many ways, but including going to college. So right now we're going to take a big chunk of your life, roughly 50 years, but let's begin right there. After you got married, where were you living, and how did the college thing unfold, and where did you go, and when did you finish, and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay. Right after I got married, we were living in an apartment in Rapid City, and she was getting ready to start her first or second year in kindergarten in Rapid City school system, and I had taken some night classes, and there again, Kathy got me started doing that while we were still going together. Actually, I'd done some night classes at the School of Mines, and then since she had a contract, we were not ready. Did not feel that we could pick up and go to Brookings, which was kind of, we'd already talked it over and mutually agreed that eventually I'd go to Brookings to get my degree down there. But she was able to walk me through a lot of this, which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And with the night classes that I'd already taken, and then I attended a full year of college at Spearfish. We'd drive up 3 days a week. We had a kind of a carpool group that drove 3 days a week all the fall and spring semester. So I got in a full year of the basics up at Spearfish. And then that summer, we went back out to the ranch and stayed down on the river in the trailer house, Kathy and I did, and did the summer ranch work. And then we moved to Brookings in that fall, and that would have been fall of '69, I guess. And Kathy and actually Carolyn had gone with her down to Brookings that summer and located a house for us to live in that we rented in the years that we were there. And so she had it all set up for us to move down to Brookings that fall, and I'd begin my 2 years of college at Brookings. I actually went 2 full years and a summer session, and graduated in the spring of '70. And then we had Bundle of Joy arrive in the spring of '70. That was Wendy.
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of a life changer when you start adding kids to your family. And anyway, I was kind of just bouncing around looking for jobs and whatnot. And
if I can interrupt for just a minute, sorry, but let me go back and pick up on the college thing just a little bit, because you said that, well, when you finished high school, you had no interest at all, but then you said you kind of had an emerging interest, and then Kathy is the one that really got you moving on it. Do you have any insight as to why, even on your own, you kind of became interested in pursuing it, even though you couldn't pull it off until she came into your life?
I guess I
Okay.
never gave it too much thought.
Okay. I was just curious about.
Well, I guess it was probably, that was probably at a time when I maybe was wondering what my future held, if I should just hang out the ranch all the rest of my life and live with my parents and that sort of thing. But I really don't think it was. I can't think of anything that really was eating at me to say that I needed to do that.
But you did enjoy your studies
I did.
at Spearfish and South Dakota State, and you did well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Wendy is born on May 15th, 1970, and you graduated a few weeks later, I guess, or maybe at the end of that summer.
No, I graduated in the first part of May, I think. We had the ceremony, and Twyla and Buck came down, and Carolyn, and Mom, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mom came. I'm not sure. Can't remember about Carolyn, but Twyla and Buck, I know, were there. And anyway, and of course Kathy and little Wendy, and then we moved back to Rapid and spent the summer in Rapid Valley in a double wide trailer, and I was looking for jobs, and finally took a job as a manager of the not of the total feedlot, but kind of the manager of the cattle side of it at the newly built Hot Springs feedlot. And we moved down there and lived in a trailer house down there for a year, and I worked down there for a year. And then I left there, and we moved to Frazee, Minnesota, and I was a manager of a ranch operation, or a registered Angus cattle operation in Frazee for 2 years. And that was a good experience also. And thinking back over that, it was probably almost a risky type of a move. The guy that hired me, I didn't know anything about, and it was kind of like, you know, I'm going to go to live in Minnesota and manage this ranch, and you know, it was like, you know, how do you know that's going to work, and if you get fired, what's going to happen, and all that. But we loaded everything up and headed up there, and Mom went with us, and we just moved into a house with a coal burning furnace, and it was it all worked out for whatever reason. We had 2 good years up there, and
what kind of a little operation was that? Was it cattle, or?
It was a registered cattle, registered Angus cattle operation. Although at the time it had been dairy farms, but this my boss from Minneapolis, he was loaded with money, so that was really maybe not as much concern as what I thought maybe it could have been, because it wasn't a money issue as far as how solid he was. And so his father had bought up quite a bunch of land, like I think around 1,500 acres of Minnesota land up there, and it wasn't real productive land, but most of it had been used as dairy farms. And then he also had a friend of his that had registered Angus cattle that were located down in Tennessee, and he shipped them up to me in the middle of the winter after he got there, and that's kind of how it became a registered Angus operation, and that's kind of the way I operated it in the 2 years that I was there. And I was just getting, I think I was getting $600 a month, and that was more than I was making down at the feedlot, I remember. And of course we had a house to live in and all that. So, and then when we moved back, we had already made arrangements in the previous probably 2 years to buy the ranch that Kathy's grandfather had purchased out near Pedro, South Dakota, back in 1945, I think, and that's where we wound up in the fall of 1973, I believe it was, and we spent about 30 years out there living at the ranch at Creighton or Pedro, Wall, whatever you want to call it, and it's where the kids went to school. And well, I guess I should back up. Spencer was born in June 6th of 1972. He was born in Minnesota at Frazee, actually. Well, no, it was in Detroit Lakes is where he was born. So we had two kids when we moved back, and moved back to the ranch and started our life there. They went to school in Wall, and
Did they go all beginning in first grade? Did they go to Wall?
for the most part, they spent all their years in Wall. Spencer for sure. Wendy's kindergarten years was spent in New Underwood. Kathy, like I mentioned before, was a kindergarten teacher, and she insisted that Wendy have a kindergarten education, and for whatever reason, New Underwood had a kindergarten program, but Wall did not at that time, and so Wendy and Spencer and Kathy stayed there in New Underwood at the house that Belva owned at that time, where Mom was living, and they kind of batched up there during the week, and when they went to kindergarten.
Okay. Yeah.
And so overall, the rest of the years were all spent at Wall.
Yeah. Okay. And both Wendy and Spencer graduated from Wall High School. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Tell a little bit about your ranching operation in those 30 plus years.
Well, like I'd been ranching since I was out of high school, so it wasn't like I moved on to the ranch at Creighton without any experience or any cattle or anything else. In the years that after I left the ranch at Elm Springs, I was still in partners with my brother-in-law Marvin, and for the most part, we were equal partners on the ranch and the cattle out there. So, at the time that I moved over to Creighton, we kind of split up our partnership, and I had cattle to move over there. So it wasn't like I was starting from scratch, but you know, the first few years, there were some pretty lean years there, and went through all the other issues of blizzards and droughts and that sort of thing. But I guess in general, I enjoyed every bit of my time I spent ranching, and it was, I mean, I was possessed with the idea that I was going to make it work no matter what, and I think, generally speaking, my ranching operation was successful, and I wound up, you know, with a pretty quality set of cattle, and the ranch itself was an excellent ranch, which helped a lot, and so everything kind of came together, and I was able to let Spencer take over, and like around 2000, we made a deal with Spencer to more or less take over the ranching operation, and he's doing well at it also, and so I guess there weren't a lot of times when well, there was never any time I regretted doing what I was doing. There was I guess a blimp or two along the way there that in my years in operation and whatnot, that I probably could have done without, but for the most part, they were all good years.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned that it was a success. You developed a successful ranching enterprise, and that's definitely the case. What do you attribute the success to? And this isn't the time to be modest. Why were you successful? Why was the ranch successful?
I guess, like all of us kids, we were instilled with a work ethic that probably propelled us into being successful as much as anything. I was not afraid to work. I guess beyond the work side of it, and I know that you can't spend all your time with your nose to the grindstone and not look at the big picture and figure out the business side of it either. But I think I probably had a pretty good feel for the business side of it, and between my work ethic and just kind of a nose for the business side of it, between those two things, and there was probably some luck involved in it at times, but that's probably, I guess, maybe why I got where I am. We actually, didn't have a lot of financial help from family or friends. Mom and Dad had given us a pretty good start on the Elm Springs Ranch. It's not like we were given that ranch. We paid for that. Kathy's grandfather gave us a pretty good deal on the ranch there, but it was not a freebie by any means. Yeah. And so you got to have a little help from the outside, I think, and to order to make an operation, any kind of a business operation work. But between a little help from family and friends and kind of a desire to be successful, it seemed to have worked.
Yeah. Makes sense. Thanks. Just one little follow-up on that. Do you have any sort of overall philosophy of ranching out in this country? The weather's always a factor. It's not as though you can always count on rainfall. Some people expand, other people don't. And do you have any general thoughts along those lines? How you manage the natural resources, whatever?
Well, as far as you mentioned the word expanding, I guess I always wished that I could have gotten bigger in my operation than I did, but on the other hand, I didn't like the idea of stretching myself so thin that I would maybe be vulnerable to going broke on my operation, or to have to spend my nights worrying about if everything was going to work out. And so I was probably maybe a little bit conservative in respect of trying to expand. And as far as bringing that forward to what we're looking at in today's times, it's a totally different ball game. Back when I got started at Elm Springs and even at Creighton, it was definitely a doable and a feasible thing to be able to go to the bank and get enough money to borrow to buy whatever you thought you needed to buy, and it would still pencil out. But the way things are at this point in time, with land priced that it is, it just, there's absolutely no way it pencils out, and so therefore you either got to have it passed on to you, or you got to have some sort of a windfall to make it work anymore. And you know, I'm not saying that you can't make it in the ranching industry today, but it's at the point where you got to have a lot of outside help anymore.
Mm-hmm. I said that was the last question I was going to ask about ranching, but I thought of another one. Dad, of course, loved ranching. Did apart from the work ethic, are there aspects of your ranching that you can trace back to him in terms of decisions that you made or philosophies of ranching or anything like that?
I think probably the biggest thing that I learned from him is how to run cattle as cheap as you can, and he was never big on farming. Well, he hated farming, and the only part of he considered farming would be maybe the times in the summer he'd put up hay, which is a pretty common thing to go along with your ranching operation. But it was his theory that you let the cattle pretty much take care of themselves and feed themselves, and supplement with some protein. And it's like in the last 10 or 15 years, the so-called experts in the ranching fields are telling how you can reduce costs by running your cattle on pasture all year round. It's like they seem to think that they've discovered a new way of running cattle, and my dad was doing it in all the years that he ranched, and that's the way the ranching operations had been handled years before my dad was ranching. So you know, and that's it's not just a little thing. That's a big deal when you can run your cattle on grass the year round as compared to trying to feed them hay all part of the year, or feedlot type of a situation. So there was other little things that I guess I can think of that he instilled in me in regards to ranching, but he knew how to run cattle, in my opinion, the way they needed to be run, and that's the way I did it, and that's the way Spencer is doing it.
And it works.
And it works.
Yeah. Well, you can't argue with success.
No.
So, very good. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. When did you move from the ranch into Rapid City here? Or maybe it's kind of a gradual thing, but...
Yeah, it was somewhat of a gradual thing. I think we bought this property like in the late 1990s, 96 or 7 or something like that maybe. And then we were kind of slow in making the transition from actually living up here full time. So I think we finally got moved in up here in maybe like the 2000. So and during that time, I was still kind of involved in the ranch operation. Spencer had completed college. I forget what year he completed, like 96 or something. So he was making the transition into becoming a full-time rancher, and he had some cows, but not near enough to maintain a viable operation on for his part of it. So over the years, I kind of kept backing out of the actual ownership of the cattle and let him become the full-time rancher in regards to the cattle side of it. And then we have a deal now to where he he leases the entire acreage, and he has all the cattle and everything else that goes with it. And so I'm getting a lease payment from him every year, and he runs the operation and calls all the shots, and I occasionally go out there if he needs a little help doing things, but for the most part, it's working very well, and he's had some really good years, and hopefully it'll all hang together, and he can look back and hopefully be as successful as I have been in my years of ranching.
Yep. Well, I'm sure that will be the case. So you've been living here on a full-time basis for at least 10, 12 years or something, roughly. Is that right?
Well, probably more like 15.
Oh, okay.
Almost.
All right. Okay. And and while during that time, including right up to the present, you go out and help from time to time. You're not out there all the time like you once were. So what do you and you and Kathy, or well, I guess in the years that you've lived here, what has occupied your time and what goes on here in between Rapid and Hermosa?
I guess, and looking back, even 20 or 25 years ago, or maybe when I was even first gone back to college, I had this dream that I would eventually be able to be successful at ranching, and at some point in time I would own some property around a metropolitan area or a city, town, whatever you want to say, and be able to kind of kick back and enjoy the, I guess, golden years, for lack of a better term, and so all of that has kind of played out the way I wanted it to. There again, it's not totally because of something I did altogether, but the pieces of the puzzle kind of fell together, and we were able to buy this property up here and be able to help Spencer get into ranching, and I wanted to be able to have at least my fingers in a little piece of ground where I could have some horses and possibly run a few cattle even, and still stay kind of involved in maybe some of the community of activities or different projects that I was interested in, as far as like going to ag industry meetings, range meetings, and spending a little time at some of the conventions that Kathy and I have been able to do, and all of that has kind of fallen into place, and so I guess it's kind of what I'd hoped for and dreamed for, and enjoying it.
Well, you did have a dream or a vision or a plan, and you pretty much made it happen. I want to pick up on a couple of those things. You mentioned involvement in local activities and things like that. And this goes back, I guess, to the time you were in Wall, but you were pretty active in the community there. I believe you're on the school board, maybe? Tell me about your involvement in community activities, community broadly defined.
Well, in our years at Wall, Kathy was actually pretty active in some of that stuff also. She got involved in church school in the church, and fundraising activities. Church was in need of more room at their church, and they expanded their church, and and we helped him in that respect financially, and the school, she wasn't really so active in any of the so-called school activities, but definitely attended all the activities of our kids, and I got involved in the school board side of it. I spent two terms as on the school board, two 3-year terms. I was elected president of the board for I think 2 or 3 years also, and you know, there again, that was at a time when I was interested in that sort of thing, and still am, but you know, it's like you feel that you need to give something back to your family or your community or whatever you want to, and I felt that was one way of doing it. It wasn't for the reason that you get rich doing those things, because you don't, but anyway, I enjoyed my years there doing that. I was involved in the local soil conservation group, which they now call the NRCS, and served on a board with that also. Was involved in high school rodeo. I served as president of that, the state organization, for I think 2 years there also, and then I got really involved in the rural water project back in the early 1980s, and actually still involved in that. But that, of all the things that I became involved in over the years, the rural water project is probably the most rewarding in terms of what I maybe accomplished. And there again, I did not do that because I wanted rewarded in any way, but it was just a nice fit for what the country needed, and I was convinced that it could be done, and we got it done. And looking back, it's probably as important, or maybe more so important, than bringing the REA or the telephones to the rural communities, because that area out there where we now ranch, that entire area, and well, beyond that a long ways too, but everyone out in that area has got rural water, and I never hear anyone complaining about any aspect of it. They love their rural water.
You must feel really good about that.
I do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like I say, it's probably one of the greatest improvements that that area out there has ever had. You know, I guess it probably wouldn't be quite as big of a deal if you had lived in an area where you had access to good water, but so much of the country, I think oftentimes either doesn't have enough water or quality water, and so it's always kind of a struggle in the small towns or in the rural area to make sure that you have an adequate supply of water. And this project is just put in place everything that you needed to have to make the rural areas as livable as the town areas, I guess.
Yeah. You mentioned that on all of these things, whether it's water or school board or whatever, you didn't do it to get rich, because volunteers don't get wealthy, but it was a feeling of a need to give back to the community. Is that something you just sort of discovered on your own, or could you trace that back to our family or parents or anything, or have you thought about that?
Well, I hadn't given a whole lot of thought. You know, Dad was somewhat politically involved at certain stages of his life, and served as the county commissioner, I think, for 12 years. And you know, I'm sure some of that rubbed off. He never bragged about his days of service of that sort, but or embellished it in any way to or encouraged me in any way to do anything like that. But I guess there again, it was kind of like you have this instinct almost like you in your business you want to be successful, and part of being successful is being able to give back a little bit to your community, and it just so happened that I was able to become successful enough to where I had the time to do some of these things that, like I say, well, there's never any direct payback, but through my efforts, I was able to help my community, and I guess if I get a reward from it, it's just the fact that I can say that I was a part of a particular project.
Yeah. Well, I commend you for that. I think it's really, really important to give back to the community in any way, in all kinds of different ways, and you've been a great example, great role model for that. You didn't do it for the awards and recognition, but I think you have received a few. I know you have. Any what reward, recognition, or two has been the most meaningful to you?
Oh, I suppose there's two that I received here. I can't even say when it was. I think in 2005 I received the Stockman of the Year Award from the Rapid City Winter Show Committee. That's probably not the correct term for that, but anyway, that was, I felt that was pretty significant. And then a year or two before that, I had received an award from the Rapid City Chamber of Commerce through their Ag and Natural Resources Committee, an award I think they termed that as a Stockman of the Year award. And those two are kind of the things that stood out. I guess another thing that I spent quite a little time with and was interested in is range management, and we received the I think they called that the Rangeman of the Year Award for our ranch out there back in it was probably in the 80s too, and I got really interested in range management and learning more about your stocking rates, your grasses, and still interested in that part of it. But and I know Spencer has. I guess I hope I've taught him some things too, but I think my involvement in range has really spurred his interest in it, and he knows as much about range and range grasses as I do probably, and I think it's probably attributed to the fact that I became interested in it, and so the range thing was a big deal too.
Well, those are very significant and important awards, and you deserved every one of them and then some, so congratulations. Let's take a break right here.
Okay.
And we'll pick up. Kirk, where we left off, we had talked about your many years between the time you got married and today, but we focused primarily on your occupation, your ranching career and successes, and your involvement in community activities and in various forms. The piece that we didn't cover, which is probably the most important part, is basically the family life. I mean, you mentioned that Wendy was born in 1970 and Spencer, I think, in 1972. And of course, you talked about Kathy's important role. But let's just kind of pick up there. And both of the kids grew up on the ranch. And what all were they into? And what was your family life out at the ranch like?
Okay, well, I think I kind of touched on a little bit of it earlier on, but Wendy was born in 1970 at Rapid City, and then Spencer was born in 1972 at Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And when we moved back to Creighton in 1973, they were both fairly young, but we decided to kind of do the arrangement that I grew up with, going to school in Sturgis, and we bought a house in Wall, and Wendy and Spencer both attended their 12 years of education there in Wall, and Kathy stayed with them during the week at the house in town and would come home on the weekends. And Kathy also boarded some other rural students there, so it was very similar to what I had gone through when I grew up and was going to school in Sturgis. And but anyway, they both did graduate from high school in Wall, and Wendy went on to college at University of Laramie, or University of Wyoming, I guess it is, in Laramie. And Spencer went to South Dakota State University, where I had graduated from, and they both got degrees. And Wendy, after she got her degree, kind of bounced around for a year or two and finally landed a job she was in Lincoln, Nebraska. She was actually living with Sam, her brother, and his wife. And anyway, she spent some time there at a job with the university, moved, and then during that time, I guess when she was at Lincoln, she did get married to Jim Abbott, and then eventually they moved to Fort Collins, Colorado, and have been there ever since. And she's still kind of into the same thing she was when she started at Lincoln, into fundraising for at this point in time, for the Colorado State University at Fort Collins. And they have two daughters, Reese and Eva. And then Spencer, after he graduated from college, he came back to the ranch. I guess maybe he was a little bit like me. He had his mind made up that he was going to be a rancher, and that was about all he was on his mind at the time. Kathy especially wanted him to go out and spend some time working before he came back to the ranch, but he wasn't interested in doing that. So anyway, he stayed out there with us while we were still there for a number of years, and then when we transitioned up here to Rapid City, he was kind of out there by himself for a few years until he got married to Paige Price, and they have 4 children: Kip, Piper, Gatlin, and Sutton. And they're kind of going through the same thing that I had gone through and that Wendy and Spencer had gone through, as far as the school part of it goes. That they did attend the rural school out there for a couple, 3 years, some of them. The youngest one isn't even in school yet, but now they're kind of transitioning into a house in town, as well as still doing quite a fair amount of commuting between Wall and the ranch. So I guess that kind of covers the side of them, or the years that we had during the education of Wendy and Spencer and kind of brought us up to where they are today.
Okay, well, thanks. Let me probe on a couple of things. When the kids were young, out at the ranch and stuff, were they involved in activities beyond helping you guys on the ranch in school?
4-H
In
a lot of things.
Oh yeah, Kathy insisted that they do 4-H, and they were heavily involved in that, and kind of at all levels. I mean, it wasn't the rodeo was a big part of it, but they also spent a lot of time in doing the regular 4-H activities that I guess we kind of think of as 4-H back in those years. You know, like the specific projects you had to complete and all that. So they were actively involved in that. Both participated in sports. Wendy was in gymnastics. Spencer played football, basketball, and wrestled a little bit. And you know, beyond the 4-H and their sports activities, I guess maybe it was pretty much just kind of hanging out at the ranch, doing whatever you do out there, you know, figuring out how to entertain themselves.
Right. Yeah. Were they easy children to raise, or? And you might want to take the Fifth Amendment on that, or any challenges there?
Well, you know, I guess there's always a certain amount of challenges, but it never reached the level to where it was out of control by any means. I mean, they never. There was never ever an issue with drugs or totally out of control doing wild, crazy things.
Not like you.
That's probably maybe not quite correct there, but yeah, they did their raising heck thing a little bit, I'm sure, but we never laid awake too many nights wondering where they were or what they were doing.
Yeah. And you were both very, very involved in being parents and trying to at least keep them on the right track. I know.
Yeah. Well, Kathy probably deserves most of the credit because she spent a lot of time with them from the time they were born to even yet today. But we were pretty interested in what was going on with them from the get-go.
Yep. Well, I know you were both excellent parents, and I commend you for that. Let me see. Is there anything else during that period about the family and so on? Well, anything else you need to share?
Well, not on that particular part of it.
Okay. Well, I think if we think of something, we can come back and add it. But I think you've covered that well. So thank you, Kirk. One thing I forgot to ask or comment on. I know that you and Kathy, over the years, and especially I guess the more recent years, have taken a lot of trips. Well, I think you also, again, getting back to the family, you had some cool family trips too. You want to share some of those?
Okay. We did take a number of trips with kids when they were smaller, and then later on, Kathy and I took some trips, just the two of us. But yeah, when the kids were smaller, I'll mention just a few of them. Like I know we flew to San Francisco and spent some time out there. And this was most of the time. These trips were during the school year. We both took them to Disney World in Florida. That was a trip we drove in with a pickup and that little topper on the back, and there were some interesting experiences on that. And then actually Kathy went back there with them again later on. And let's see, we one Christmas we took a trip. I think we drove to Denver, skied at Denver, or in the mountains there at Denver, and then left there, flew from there to Tucson, and spent our Christmas vacation down in Tucson. And Kathy had already previously arranged all the different places we were going to stop and see in, our accommodations and all that. So those were a couple of the maybe major trips that I can think of offhand that we did as a family. We did Yellowstone, and there was some other little mini trips, I guess, maybe that we took. After they were pretty well grown and weren't interested in following Kathy and I around, why I think I mentioned this back in some of my other previous information there, that Kathy and I both went to several different places as a result of my involvement in different organizations. And we would go to like the annual meeting of the SRM, the Society for the Range Management, or the NCBA, the National Cattlemen's Association, and had some real interesting, educational, fun trips doing that. So that was kind of programmed into our life from the get-go, that we were going to take the kids on a certain amount of trips, and then we wanted time to do some of that, just the two of us. I guess we also went on we've been on 3 major cruises, Kathy and I have been. We went to Alaska on a cruise with Larry and Charlotte Gabriel. That was the first cruise we ever went on. And then we did the Millennium Cruise with a fairly large group of us, actually. Wendy and Spencer and Kathy and I and some other people were involved in that. And then Kathy and I did a cruise later on that left New York City, I guess it was, and we went up into Canada, to Newfoundland and Nova Scotia and Prince Albert, I believe it was. So that's the 3 cruises we've been on also.
You mentioned Canada. You've done some additional international trips though too, right?
Yeah, we did fly into Vancouver for a SRM meeting. I went up on a fishing trip with some locals from around the Wall area. We drove up on that trip and fished up in Canada. Another time we went to the Calgary Stampede, Kathy and I, and that was also tied in with a Society for Range Management meeting. So yeah, we've been to Canada several times. Haven't been into the heart of Mexico, but we've done quite a few of the border towns, as well as the coastal towns as far as Mexico goes. Yeah. Oh, and I guess then we also made a trip with you to Germany. Kathy and I did.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was real. We really enjoyed that one. That was a good trip. And then also, Kathy and I went to Ireland with several of my siblings, and those were kind of our so-called international trips, but really enjoyed both of those.
Well, and then Costa Rica, I just remember.
Oh, yeah, we did. That's right. New Year's, I forget the date, the year even, but that's been about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess now. We were in Costa Rica for New Year's Eve, and spent a week or so down there touring around Costa Rica, and Sam was with us because he was kind of our tour guide, actually. But the reason we were there was because my son-in-law Jim Abbott was trying to get his master's degree, and one of his final assignments was to do some sort of a paper or something connected with the project in Costa Rica. So anyway, we all flew down there, and we left Jim sitting on a bench in about kind of the middle of nowhere, waiting for somebody to pick him up. And I guess they eventually picked him up because we all made it back to Fort Collins in South Dakota eventually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was quite a scene. I can still see that in my mind, leaving him out there. You know, you talked about what Spencer and Wendy are doing. We forgot to talk about Jim and Paige. Jim's occupation and Paige's life, just...
Well, Jim graduated from University of Wyoming also, and he has been working in kind of the construction-related industry, mostly buying and selling heavy equipment. The company that he works for, he's worked for 2 or 3 kind of major companies that does that sort of thing. They have online auctions as well as on-site auctions. So that's more or less been his occupation. And then Paige has basically been a housewife. She never had an 8-to-5 job since she and Spencer have been married. But they started having kids within a year after they were married, and they all came kind of in a bunch. So she had her work cut out for her because there was 4 of them within about a range from about 4 years, well, maybe 5 years, but probably 6 years between the youngest and the oldest. So, but they were a pretty active group and a handful, but they were still nice kids.
Yeah, right. And Paige is a very talented musician or singer, right?
Yeah, Paige is really into music, and she has taught those kids. Well, I don't know about taught them because it just kind of came natural for them, but she's taught them how to perform in front of groups, and they're pretty talented as far as the music goes. And actually, Wendy's kids are very musical too, and where they get that from, we have yet to figure it out, because I know my musical talents are slim and none, and Kathy's head and heels over me, but nevertheless, she says she doesn't have any musical talents either. So,
where did Paige go to college?
she went to Chadron. She graduated from Chadron.
Okay, all right, okay.
Pretty much with a degree in the kind of the journalism area, I think, type stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we filled in those blanks. Any humorous stories you want to share about Wendy and Spencer as they were growing up?
Oh, there's a number of them, but I guess I don't probably need to spend a lot of time trying to share all that maybe either, so pass on that.
You want to pass or choose a favorite or just pass?
Well, I guess on one of our trips was Wendy and Spencer. That's when we went to Disney World, and we were staying in a little campground. An area was called let's see, I think it was called the Bobcat Den or something like that, and I was trying to impress upon Spencer, because he's only 4 and he couldn't talk very well, and was always just kind of following Wendy around, and so I kept trying to ask him every now and then if he remembered the little campground area that we were staying in. I kept telling him it's a Bobcat Den, and so about the 5th or 6th time I asked him where it was, and he said, "The fox run." So, and he actually did get lost in later on during that trip, which we kind of panicked, but we found him. And I don't know, I can't think of any real humor stories about Wendy at the moment.
Okay. Well, if we think of them, and we can come back to them. So, okay. Well, I think we pretty well filled in those gaps, Kirk. Thank you. We're back. Kirk just happened to think of an incident that is mighty humorous, and go for it.
Yeah, this was probably the one that took the cake of any of the different humorous and amusing things that happened during the years when Wendy and Spencer were smaller. But all of us had gone to Rapid City, and Kathy had a doctor appointment, and so she said, "You drop me off and pick me up in an hour and a half." And so in order to kill some time, I decided that we'd just go over to one of the stores. It was kind of a home furnishing store that had, like beds and all sorts of bathroom fixtures and that type of thing on display. And we were just wandering around in the store, not intending to buy anything, but just killing time. And all of a sudden, Spencer turned up missing. And like I say, he was always just kind of shadowing Wendy, and then he did everything Wendy did. But all of a sudden, he was gone, and I started kind of looking across the store, and I spotted him over in the area where the toilet stools of the lavatories were on display, and there he was up on the stool with his pants pulled down. And I thought, ooh man, Kathy had been trying to potty train him, and it was just like it wasn't working. He would sit there for hours and not do anything. And so I thought, well, it can't be too bad. And I got over to there, and I could see that it was a major number 2. And I jerked him off of there and pulled his pants up and looked around to see if anyone had seen or noticed the scene. And I was pretty confident that we had not been noticed by any of the clerks or anything else. And so we left the scene in a hurry and went and picked up Kathy kind of on the run and told her that we needed to get out of town. And we left town, and about 2 years later, or maybe even less, that store did go out of business, but I don't think it was probably as a result of what we had left in the store.
Oh, that is a great one. I'm glad you remembered that. I don't think anyone will be able to top that one. That is just priceless. Okay. Well, that last question brought us up to contemporary times, and just give us a little brief snapshot of what your life is like now and what's going on.
Well,
excuse me. I think it's already been stated, but where do you live?
We've lived here just south of Rapid City along Highway 79 since right around the year 2000. I think we actually pretty much moved in and stayed on a full-time basis. Like I think I mentioned before, we owned a house several years before that, but
They were my parents.
it was Kathy's folks actually lived in here for a while after we bought it, and then it just pretty much sat empty for a year or two. Actually, Jill, your daughter, stayed here a little while she was doing her work with KEVN TV. But since that time, since 2000, we've actually lived here, and I originally got out the ranch a lot more than I do anymore, and was kind of more involved with the ranch there early on, but pretty much have gotten out of that part of it even, although I occasionally go out the ranch to help Spencer a little bit on occasions, and just other than that, I take care of my time by riding some horses. We have dogs and cats that we take care of. Kathy does that also, but got a fair amount of things that need to be done around the house here. And we got a big yard. I do some gardening. We've also got a rental house next door here that takes a fair amount of time, just kind of keeping things in order over there. And anyway, it's kind of what I wanted to be able to do at this point in my life. It's not like I have to worry about blizzards and getting up at night pulling calves, and still have some ties with the ranch and that sort of thing. And it's been a good retirement in my opinion.
Well, that's the opinion that counts.
Yeah.
And you still are involved, I think, a little bit in some of the civic activities in Rapid and stuff.
Yeah, there's
Not so much.
a group that's involved with the Rapid City Chamber that has monthly meetings that I go to, and I'm still involved with the rural water project that I started with back in the 80s. I go to those meetings every month. We have some special meetings on beyond that too, but so still kind of stay involved in some of the civic activities, but I'm able to kind of call my own shots now, and if I don't want to do something the next day, I don't have to, or if I want to do this, I can, and don't have to worry about being under pressure to get something done as far as ranching duties goes and that sort of thing. So I'm enjoying it.
Good. And you also, I know family and your kids and grandkids are important, and you find time to go spend a little time with them as well, don't you?
Yeah, well, we get to spend quite a little time with Spencer's grandkids just because they're closer here, and they're involved in extracurricular activities, and we enjoy going on to most all their activities. And but we also get down to Fort Collins and see Wendy and Jim and Reese and Eva on a pretty regular schedule. We'll get down there every 2 to 3 months for sure, and it's fun to go down there and spend time with them because the two girls are involved in sports and all that sort of thing too, and so we got time to do all that kind of stuff, and still be able to kick back and kind of relax and not be under any big pressure to get anything done.
Sounds just about right.
Yeah, it's just about right.
All right, good enough. Thank you. Kirk, let's shift kind of a wide-ranging array of things to talk about. Let's begin with Mom and Dad. We each have different recollections and sort of perceptions of them, but how would you describe their personality, their temperament, their character? Mom first, then Dad, however you want to do it.
I guess in thinking back, over the years, of course Dad was a lot older than Mother, but I guess that at the time I never realized that was an issue, and it wasn't, I guess, but in looking back, there's like 17 years difference between the two of them, but that certainly didn't have any effect on how they mothered us, and they were both pretty even keel. There was never any yelling and screaming and shouting and fighting in our family life that I can ever recall. a minor little disagreement maybe would be the best way to describe anything, but there was very, very, very little bickering between Mom and Dad, and you know, I guess there was a fair amount of bickering between the 7 of us kids, but there again, looking at the whole picture, the 7 of us, and we're all still alive, which we got to knock on wood, but you know, I do not recall at any point in our lives with any of us that we were fighting at the level that we would not speak to each other for weeks and months at a time. And you know, in looking back over that, I guess that's maybe unusual that that the 7 of us are where we are in our lives and all been fairly successful, and we can still sit down and visit with each other. And like I say, I don't think, at least I don't recall at any time when any of us were not speaking to each other. And so, and maybe that says a lot about our Mom and Dad, maybe, is because I don't know if they exactly, they never sat down and told us that that's how we were going to have to lead our lives and behave, but for some reason or other, we all had the desire, I don't know if that's quite the right word, to know that we didn't want to get into a lot of bickering and fighting, and get it to a level where we weren't even speaking to each other. So from maybe, like I say, that's part of our lives with a mother and a father that were not necessarily strict in what we wanted to do. They gave us a lot of freedoms, but it just seems like all of us were aware that there were certain boundaries that we needed to stay within, and for whatever reason we were able to stay within those boundaries. And like I say, we're all still here and still speaking with each other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is your interview, not mine, but I would just echo that and say that we're really blessed that we have always got along and never had a point where there was any not speaking to one another, or there was no drama with Mother and Dad.
No, there wasn't. You know, they, like I say, they never would really tell us what was right and what was wrong necessarily, or what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing, or never try to really push us into what we should do as far as our education went or anything. But there must have been some subtle things going on that they were able to instill in us that carried us through life, and we did a pretty good job of keeping it all together.
I agree. What do you think brought them the most joy or satisfaction or happiness in life?
The children.
Well, yeah, they were definitely proud of all of us 7 kids, and then Dad in particular just loved little kids, and he enjoyed grandkids as much as he did his own kids probably, but the grandkids would just light up his life or his day whenever they were around. Mother, she would get a little frustrated with kids, and seemed to be more at ease and liked to be around her children actually when they were more mature and doing the things that we did at that point in our life. She stayed very interested in all the things that we were doing after we got out of school, after we got out of college, after we got married, and she does a fair amount, quite a little amount of traveling to see all of the kids, and made a point of getting out to see them wherever we were. We weren't, most of them weren't scattered too far, but she stayed very, very involved in our lives, and you know, there again, with neither of them, we ever reached a point where we were telling them not to even show up, or not, we didn't want to speak to them or ever want to see them again. It was just like, you don't do that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. What was there anything that stressed out either mother or dad? Even though they're, in general, you mentioned their personalities were very consistent and stable, but if anything would get to them or worry them, maybe there was nothing. What might that be?
Well, that word stress seems like it's kind of a newer word, and back in the Dalzell days, we never even heard the word. It didn't seem like, and now they use it to describe about every incident. But no, I guess mother would maybe get a little stressed out when company was coming or something. I'm sure Dad, when he's in the ranching business, worried about the weather and blizzards and that sort of thing. But overall, it just seemed like nothing really shook them too much.
Did they have any pet peeves or little quirks and silly little habits or anything that you can think of? Either one of them?
Oh, I guess nothing of any consequence. Mother was definitely afraid of snakes, and all of us, I think, teased her with a snake scenario at some point in time, maybe. Dad was, I guess the one little quirk I always kind of remember, he didn't like buttons. I mean, it was like he would button his shirt, but if you handed him a handful of buttons to put in his hand, he would throw them away. I don't know where that came about, but and then I guess the other story with Dad is that he was one of 11 kids and the oldest, the second oldest. So we've all of us have heard the story that when his last brother was born, that he told his parents that he had to get the hell out of there because there's too damn many kids, and yet he turned around and raised 7 of his own, and thoroughly enjoyed them and loved them all and loved his grandkids. So
yeah, that's an interesting little thing I hadn't thought about. Yeah, for sure. And he wasn't that old, I don't think, when he left his home.
No,
I don't know.
about 20.
How old?
About 20.
20. Okay. Were they religious?
Well,
So.
I guess that depends on how you define that, or
Yeah.
how do you define being a Christian. There again, it just seemed like we had these kind of subtle morals that we lived within, and you can call them a religious set of morals or a Christian set of morals or whatever, but we never did a lot of church time. I remember going to Bible school, summer Bible school out at Elm Springs, and it was like torture for me, but they insisted, and this was Mother more than Dad, but they insisted that we all do that. Mother pretty much insisted that we go to church every Sunday in Sturgis while we were going to high school. Other than that, they never felt themselves aligned with any particular religious group or denomination, really. It was just kind of like, you find your religion wherever you want to find it. Maybe riding a horse out across the prairie type thing.
Yeah. What about involvement in, I guess, what you might think of as community life, politics, organizations, associations, that kind of thing, for either or both of them?
Well, they were both somewhat involved in those kind of civic activities, I guess. Maybe Dad a little bit more than Mother, but Mom got really involved in the Cowbell organization, which was the women's side of the South Dakota State Stock Growers, and even took it to the national level. And she was never a national officer, I don't think, but she went to several national meetings representing the Cowbells, because she was state president of the South Dakota Cowbells, and she took that very seriously and spent a lot of time on it and was pretty devoted to it. And as far as I know, she did a good job. I think she's fairly well respected amongst her peers. Dad's was a little more on the political side. He was county commissioner for 12 years. There again, I think very well respected amongst his peers. He served as a board chairman in Meade County for a number of years during those 12 years. And you know, he was kind of, other than commissioners, involved in the creation of the water conservation districts when back in late 40s, I think. That was when they finally they kind of were getting into conservation ideas after the Dust Bowl days, and he was involved a little bit in that side of that part of it. He also was a member of the South Dakota Stock Growers as well as the NCBA, and you know, he attended meetings at the South Dakota Stock Growers, and I remember going along with him on some of those meetings. Actually, I became a junior stock growers for a number of years while they were, both he and Mom were involved in the state stock growers. They both went to a number of national cattlemen's meetings, I think, too. But so that's probably, for the most part, their involvement in civic organizations.
Do you have any favorite stories about either of them? Humorous or otherwise?
No, I guess I'll pass on.
Okay. Finally, I think we all agree that they did a good job, but no parent is perfect. Anything that you kind of wish they'd have done a little differently, either one of them, and as you look back, or not?
Well, nothing of any consequences. I guess maybe looking back at my high school years, I always wished I had gotten a little more involved in the sports side of things in high school, and I think I needed pushed by my mother or dad or both of them, and encouraged to do that. And like I don't fault them for doing that, but you know, I think parents at some time need to kind of be a little more forceful than what they were. They were being not forceful is probably an attribute as much as anything, but at times maybe they could have encouraged us to do a few outside activities that we didn't do, or at least that I didn't do.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to share about our parents?
No, I guess I'm just feel fortunate to have them as parents, and I'm sure practically anyone has the same views about their parents, but you know, they did the best that they could do, and I'm satisfied that they raised us all in a way that we got to be proud of ourselves.
Agreed. I agree. Okay, thanks. Kirk, tell me a little bit about Kathy's family, where they were from, and ancestry and whatever.
Her side of the family all grew up in the central Iowa area, around Humboldt, Iowa. Her grandfather was probably the reason that they have a South Dakota connection, because in the 40s he started buying ranch land out in the Wall area, and got acquainted with the area, and as a result his daughters and son actually kind of migrated out here as a result of that, and so that's how they got connected with South Dakota. Kathy's biological father was killed in World War II when she was just like a little over a year old. His plane went down over the Pacific. It wasn't shot down, it was a mechanical failure. And I think all but one of them, all but one of them perished. The tail gunman lived through the crash, but the rest of them perished. And then her mother did not remarry right away, but she did remarry, and he was also from the Humboldt area, Al Jensen, and they, like I say before, they actually got out here because of Kathy's grandfather had needed help out here doing various things, and so they drifted out here, and then eventually Al and Marge got married, and they moved to Seattle, where he went to school at the University of Seattle, or I'm not sure what the...
I don't know, could have been University of Washington, or maybe Seattle University.
University of Washington, I think it was. Anyway, he was in an architect school there he did not graduate with a degree, but he did attend there. And then eventually they moved back to South Dakota, to Rapid City, and Bruce was born out there. She has one brother. And ever since then, Kathy was around Rapid City with her parents, and she graduated from high school in Rapid City, and I think I said previously that she graduated from University of Wyoming. So that kind of covers most of that part of the family.
And Al is still alive.
Yes, Kathy's dad, or stepdad, is alive. He's 93 years old. In more recent years, he and Marge would spend some winters in Arizona and summers here at Rapid City, and then she passed away, must be maybe 10 years ago or somewhere in there. And he's continued that part of his life with going back and forth. But as of now, he's having some health issues right now, and pretty well confined to living at home with help. So, but his mind is very sharp, and he's had a good life as well, and enjoys his family as well as his grandkids.
Okay, thanks for pulling in that side of the family. As you look back on your life, what are some of the areas that you regard as your most important accomplishments, most proud of? most satisfaction?
I guess probably one of the biggest accomplishments was deciding to go back to school and get my 4-year degree. And that all had to do with Kathy encouraging me to do that, but I'm really glad that I did that. It was a little unorthodox in regards to the time you do it and that sort of thing. I was married at the time, but I did all my college education, which you know, I didn't do anything right out of high school. It took about 9 years for me to get back to doing it, but I felt that was a major accomplishment. And I guess as far as the ranch side of it goes, and I feel that I've been fairly successful in my ranch operation. And there again, how do you define successful, I guess would be the question, but from a financial standpoint, I guess I feel very comfortable in that respect, and you know, I think I kind of won the respect of my peers and neighbors by doing things out at the ranch that I did, and I've also mentioned some of the awards I won, and it wasn't that that was my object in trying to do all this, but I knew from the get-go that when I started ranching, I was determined to make it work, and had it not, I don't know what would have happened, but I was obsessed with making my ranch operation work, and I put in a lot of hard hours, and I guess probably the other major thing that I feel that I had a fairly good part of was the rural water project. I've worked on that probably close to 35 years, and initially it was like I was driving around out in the country asking my neighbors to donate some money to a rural water project that was you know, kind of questionable whether or not it would ever get off the ground, because we definitely need federal funds to make it work. And anyway, we got it all put together, and it got completed, and I'm very proud of the fact that I had a part of that. I actually served as president of the board of directors of that group for like 15 years. I made numerous trips to Washington, D.C. to testify for funds, and so it was real rewarding and very educational, and very much needed in the area that we lived in.
Well, that's that's an impressive list of accomplishments, and you're a little understated. I think that they're even more impressive than you let on. But what about anything about the flip side of that? Areas that have been particularly challenging or disappointing, or that you have you want to share?
Disappointing sides?
Well, yeah. I mean, in it, you know, what do I have down here? Yeah, adversity, disappointment, regrets, challenges, things you wish had gone a little differently.
No, not really.
Okay.
You know, I guess.
Well, as you look back on your different chapters of your life, including the current one, is there one that stands out as being the best?
One that's what been the best?
Well, one of the, I mean, if you think about the chapters of your life, you know,
the chapters. Oh, okay.
Everything from, I guess, high school would be one chapter to your years out on the ranch, another chapter. Your current chapter. Some of them, one of them stands out as being the best.
You know, like, I hate to say one is better than the other, but I go back to my dad's comment about freighting out in Wyoming in the early 1900s, and he says it was some of the best years of his life. And I guess he used the term best. I've throughout my, if you want to divide my life up into those into specific chapters, I think I can safely say that they've all been some of the best years of my life. I've never had any periods in time when I was totally down and out, and stayed that way for a period of time. So, you know, I guess you can say that the years when I was single and out of high school and didn't have any responsibilities and free to do whatever I wanted to do, those were kind of exciting years and good years. But I liked the years I was playing outside of the ranch house at Dalzell, South Dakota, building my corrals and running my little ranch there also, and spending time on the water project and going to DC was, you know, as rewarding as it can get. So trying to single out any part of it as being better than the other, I guess I hate to try to do that.
Okay. I was going to ask you, but you may have already answered it. Some of your best childhood memories. Maybe that's out there beside the house with your toys, huh?
Well, I don't know about the best again, but
Or just, I guess, important childhood memories.
yeah, you know, it was just like those years were pretty stress-free, and you know, Mother and Dad was there kind of mothering over us, and the fact that we didn't have a lot of money or a lot of the things that we can enjoy now, we didn't know that we didn't know what we were missing, so we were all happy.
Do you have any pet peeves?
I don't think so.
Okay, that takes care of that one.
Yeah.
Well, let's close by sharing how the world has changed since you were young.
Well, I guess it never stops changing. I can, in looking back over the years Dad was here, I just find it impossible to think that the world could change as much in that period of time as it has since that, or ever will again, because he grew up in the horse and buggy days and watched the automobile come on the scene and airplanes come on the scene and land a man on the moon. And you know, and looking back over my 76 years, all of that stuff was already there practically when I grew up. I guess I did witness the man on the moon thing, but you know, we had the cars, the trains, the planes, all of that. I guess maybe the biggest thing that's happened is in the area of technology and communications and computers and iPhones and all that sort of thing, and that's pretty mind-boggling, and it's maybe as big a change as going from a horse and buggy to an airplane, maybe, in a lot of respects. But you know, as far as it being good or bad, I got to view it as being good. There are just challenges along the way with any of those changes that you got to learn how to kind of sort out, and so it's changed a lot since I was out at Dalzell, and it's going to keep changing, and you can't stop that part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that you want to pick up on that we either didn't cover or you want to elaborate on?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time and your insights and your patience and good sense of humor. And as your bro, I'm proud of you. Thank you for everything that you've helped me with, and including this little interview.
Well, I need to thank you for taking the time to try to put all this together, and we'll anxiously wait for the finished product. But this is a major undertaking on your part, and I think we're all waiting to see what it looks like at the end.
Well, thanks. It's a labor of love because of my love of family, and I hope I can get it all packaged in a way that can kick it back to everyone and be of both interest and value. So
Okay.
I'll keep working on it. Thank you again.